Sound quality coming from the current speaker is not sufficient for interpretation. Interpretation will resume as soon as the sound quality allows it.
Énoncé du peuple algonquin Anishinaabe. Bienvenue à la réunion numéro 65 du Comité permanent du patrimoine canadien. As you know, the meeting is going to be hybrid as we have been continuing according to the House of Commons order adopted on the 23rd of June, 2022. And so even though it is not mandated to wear masks, I would like to remind the committee that it is advisable, since the World Health Organization has reiterated that this is still a pandemic of COVID. And for those of you who are in Ontario, you know that there have been lots of cases that have been going to the emergency room. So it's just a good idea to protect yourself and your colleagues. Please remember not to take screenshots of the meeting or of the video. And of course, one of the things that I want to remind you about is that yes, certain rules. Please address your anything that you have to say to the chair. Do not speak until the chair recognizes you by name. So it's as simple as that. And also for those of you who are witnesses, please note that if you are you hybrid or the witnesses there, clerk?
They are present in the room.
All right. Well, then you know how to access interpretation. There's a little button next to you, and you can access floor interpretation in English or in French. If someone wishes, there is an order here, and I'm going to begin now by welcoming the witnesses from the Department of Canadian Heritage, Mala Khanna, Associate Deputy Minister, and Charles Slowey, Assistant Deputy Minister, Community and Identity. And as you know, we would like to begin the discussion of the Canadian Heritage's contract with the Community Media Advocacy Centre. And again, I would ask the witnesses, please, that you have 5 minutes. And it isn't 5 minutes each, it's 5 minutes for your group. So you may decide who speaks when and how, and I will give you a heads up when you have about a minute or 30 seconds to go. I will say it loud because I know sometimes you're reading and can't see me if I hold up a card. So I shall begin and welcome to the Department of Canadian Heritage. Who would be speaking for you, please? Ms. Khanna or Mr. Slowey?
Ms. Khanna.
Thank you very much, Ms. Khanna. Please begin for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm pleased to be with you today to speak about funding granted and subsequently terminated to the Community Media Advocacy Centre and the steps that the Department of Canadian Heritage has taken to strengthen and clarify our grants and contributions processes. My name is Mala Khanna. I'm the Associate Deputy Minister for Canadian Heritage, and I'm here with Charles Slowey, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister for the Community and Identity Sector, and we are joining you today from the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Let me start by reiterating that anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred have no place in Canada. Organizations and individuals demonstrating hateful and racist behavior, whether anti-Semitic, anti-Francophone, anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, or against any other racial or religious groups should not be supported through government funding. The hateful comments made by Mr. Maroof were shocking and profoundly disturbing to us. Had Canadian Heritage officials been aware of his comments, the project would not have been funded. As the Minister did when he was before you on October 7th, I would also like to apologize for the pain that this has caused. In explaining what happened in this situation, I will just start with a bit of context. Canadian Heritage officials negotiate thousands of grants and contributions with individuals and organizations every year. Last year, the department administered $1.7 billion in grants and contributions, representing 80% of its total budget. In delivering these programs, the department follows established review procedures, which include the assessment of the public profile of the organization, the applicant's track record, financial issues. In this case, the project on paper met the criteria of the Anti-Racism Action Program. There was an internet search done of CMAC as an organization, but it was not done of the individuals that would be performing the work because nothing came up after the search of CMAC. And so had hateful comments turned up, the project would not have been funded. On July 26th, the Minister's office informed me by phone that there was an issue that would need to be looked into concerning anti-Semitism with one of our projects. On August 2nd, I received information from the Minister's office via email about the case, including one of the offensive tweets. Between August 2nd and August 19th, the department determined how the individual was connected to the project, reviewed the contractual obligations, sought legal advice, and ultimately suspended the project on August 19th. The Minister then terminated the agreement with CMAC, and the department is pursuing the recovery of funds that were paid to CMAC. Lors de la réunion du 7 octobre,
At the October 7th meeting, the Minister acknowledged that the time it took to suspend and terminate the agreement, once we were informed of the hateful comments, could have been shorter. I agree with him. We have learned from this experience and have taken steps to strengthen this process and shorten the timelines.
lors de la réunion du
At the October 7th meeting, Minister Hussein also stated that he had asked the department to conduct a full review of the existing process.
la suite de ce processus,
As a result of this process, funding applications now explicitly state that projects that espouse hatred or discrimination are not eligible. Applicants are now asked to certify in writing that they will not undermine the anti-racism strategy and will respect the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Human Rights Act. The Minister now has the option to immediately terminate a contract. We are conducting an online public information search on the organization and individuals identified to work on the project. Program officers have received training on the new criteria and on anti-racism and anti-Semitism. Using the new audit process, we reviewed each of the active and funded agreements, approximately 350 in total, and approximately 200 additional applications which fall under Canada's anti-racism strategy. And funds are now flowing back to the communities where they belong so that groups can continue to undertake this important work.
nous entreprenons
We are also undertaking a broader review of all Canadian Heritage programs, and the results of this review will help us refine and improve our processes.
le ministère a entrepris
The department has undertaken significant work to address the serious issues that have been highlighted in this situation, and we would be pleased to now answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kana. And now I'm going to begin the question and answer session, and we begin with the first round of 6 minutes for the Conservatives, and I do not have the name of the Conservative speaker, so perhaps you could let us know.
Rachel Thomas.
Yes, Ms. Thomas, please begin for 6 minutes.
Awesome, thank you. Just a quick clarification here, Ms. Kana. You said that an internet search was done, but that individuals weren't looked at, only CMAC was. It was blatantly obvious to the general public that there were only 2 individuals working for CMAC. That's on public record, and that is Mr. Maroof and his wife. So given the small nature of this organization, I'm just curious as to why an internet search wasn't done on them as individuals, since they are the organization.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The processes that were followed were the established processes, and the organization internet search was done of the organization, and because nothing problematic turned up, they did not go further. And that is what has now been adjusted. In the review that we have done since, we now are going through and looking at the board of directors, the executive director, individuals associated with the project that are listed in the application. And so that work now is being done as a result of the learning we have had through this experience.
You said that an email was sent to you by the minister's office to the department. I'm just wondering, on August 2nd. And so I'm just curious as to which minister's office this was.
Minister Hussein's office.
Okay, thank you. And so that was sent on August 2nd, but then funding wasn't revoked or asked to be revoked until August 22nd by Minister Rodriguez. Is that correct?
No, it was August 19th that the contract was suspended.
That's interesting because Mr. Rodriguez testified something very different at this committee. He actually said that he wasn't made aware of this until August 22nd, at which point he asked for funding to be revoked. Would you be willing to table the email that was received?
The email that was received on August 2nd?
The minister, you said that there was an email received asking for funding to be revoked.
No, on August 19th, the contract was suspended with the organization.
Okay. And would you have documentation of that?
Yes.
And you'd be able to provide that to the committee?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm also just curious as to this funding that was received by Mr. Maroof concerning the Anti-Racism Action Program. How many applications were received for that funding?
Initially, 1,100 applications.
1,100 applications. Perfect. And I'm just wondering if this was an open and competitive process.
It was an open process, yes.
Okay. How long were those applications open for?
The initial call for proposals was on September 3rd, 2019, and I believe it closed in January 2020.
Okay. What made Mr. Maroof and his wife the best choice for funding?
Initially, they were not successful in the first review of applications. Then additional funding was received by the program, and all of the initial proposals that were submitted were re-reviewed, and it was felt on paper that it met the criteria of the Anti-Racism Action Program.
Okay. Mr. Maroof tweeted that he was, quote, begged by the department and that money was thrown at him with regard to this grant. Is there any truth to that claim?
No, Madam Chair, there is no truth to that claim. The organization was contacted to see if they would be interested in having their project looked at again, because the initial call after that was done, it was not successful, and then we were looking at projects again. And so in that case, the outreach was made purely to see if they were still interested in having their application reviewed.
Okay. And then in terms of the application that was submitted by Mr. Maroof or CMAC, would you be willing to share a copy of that application submission?
I believe we could do so, yes.
Awesome. I'd love that to be tabled with the committee. Now, of course, we know it's come to light that Mr. Maroof is quite the anti-Semite and very public about it. It's all over his Twitter account and other social media accounts. It's interesting that this wasn't caught. I'm wondering then, when did the department become aware that there was a problem? When did that first cross the desk of someone within the department?
On July 26th, when the minister's office called to say that there was an issue that required some follow-up with respect to anti-Semitism with one of our projects.
Okay. So July 26th is when the department was made aware. What's interesting to me is that Minister Hussein has testified at this committee that on July 19th, he became aware. So that took him about 7 days to finally contact the department and ask that action be taken. I'll let that rest there. I'm curious as to what the department did when they became aware of this.
So on August 2nd, there was one of the offensive tweets was sent to the department, and so we did work to identify Mr. Maroof and connection with CMAC, looked at the contract to assess the contract, sought legal advice, and then by August 19th suspended the project.
Okay. And what kind of communication was had with the minister?
We were keeping the minister's office.
30 seconds, Mrs. Thomas.
During that period, we were keeping the minister's office aware of the work that we were doing.
Has the money been paid back?
The money has, Madam Chair, been requested to be paid back. We have hired a third-party collection agency. It's been demanded to be paid back. We have first started with a collection agency who has since December been making attempts to get the money. We have not yet received the money, and so the minister is...
Even a dollar? Has even a dollar been received?
No money has yet been received.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's it, Mrs. Thomas. And then I go to the Liberals now for 6 minutes. Mr. Housefather, Anthony, 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here today, to both of you. And in my second round, I'm going to come back to where we are now and what the changes have been made to the process to stop this from ever happening again. But I need to start with where we started from. Laith Marouf, why for Canadians this is important? His Twitter description said, have a motto, life is too short for shoes with laces or for entertaining Jewish white supremacists with anything but a bullet to the head. That was his Twitter top thing that you see on his Twitter feed. We had a rise in anti-Semitism like we've never seen in 2021. And we had to hold a national summit, the first national summit on anti-Semitism. His tweet about it was, a wacko indigenous house slave of apartheid Canada from the First Nations Confederacy of Educational Centers opens the Jewish white supremacist colonist conference hosted by the Zionist lobby MP, PM Justin Trudeau, and apartheid Israel to infer indignity on Zionist colonists. These were in his Twitter, along with racist, francophobic, horrible things. So on April 14th, 2022, a press release was issued. I can understand what you said, that we only looked at CMAQ for the grant. But a press release was issued that quoted both Laith Marouf and Ahmed Hussein. At that point, did anyone bother to Google Laith Marouf?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. Organizations, they are responsible for their communications. In this case, we were relying on the initial vetting, and so there was no additional vetting done. And
so nobody looked at the press release in the department and said, the minister's going to put a quote there, we're putting his good name out there, and this gentleman's name is there, we should Google that gentleman?
Madam Chair, we relied on the initial vetting that had
Will this
been done.
process now change as well for press releases?
We are looking at how we can ensure that we are systematically, over the course of projects that are approved at key moments, such as press releases, do additional screening before that happens.
Okay.
Yes.
Would you be able to provide to the committee a copy of the new screening mechanisms? I would like to see both how department officials are now being trained on anti-Semitism and other forms of hate, what the new training process is, and what the new vetting process is. Could you provide those documents to the committee?
Yes, we can provide those documents to the committee. There was training that was done in October, both for all program advisors, both with respect to the way that the criteria are to be implemented, as well as training on anti-Semitism and anti-racism.
So if we could get those documents, that would be great. I want to now come to the termination, because Ms. Thomas pointed something out that I was going to remark upon. It's a public record that I alerted the minister on the 18th of July. I sent him 3 emails on that day with information that would have easily been able to tell you who Laith Marouf was. You're saying that you first received communication on July the 25th or 26th?
26th.
And was that by an email or a phone call?
By phone call.
From who?
From the Minister's Chief of Staff, Madam Chair.
From Hirsch Jewell. Okay. And did he not provide you with that call with the name Laith Marouf?
Madam Chair, I am not. I don't remember for sure. I don't want to mislead the committee. I don't recall. He described that there was an issue. He said that that we needed to look into it. I don't believe.
Okay. What was the next thing that happened? The department didn't begin looking into it until further information was received from the minister's office on August the 2nd?
Madam Chair, yes, on August the 2nd, when I received an email with one of the offensive tweets, that was when we started.
So you didn't receive an email with an offensive tweet till August the 2nd, and nobody in the department went to look for the offensive tweet between July the 25th and August the 2nd?
Madam Chair, that's right.
Okay, that is disappointing. Then let me ask you, why did it take, once you have seen this offensive tweet, I think this is what most Canadians want to know. It's what I want to know. I would have looked at that offensive tweet and said, you must cancel the contract immediately. Why did it take such a period from August the 2nd to August the 19th to suspend the contract?
Madam Chair, I understand the question, and what I can say is I agree that it could have been shorter, and I think that as a result of this experience, we have made changes through the system.
To allow the minister to terminate immediately, I understand. But the breach in that contract was so egregious that I would have imagined termination for default could have occurred regardless. I would have loved to see CMAQ come back and sue the government for terminating a contract after these tweets came out. What was the delay in the process? Where was the delay? Did legal advice take a long time to come back? What was the delay?
I think, Madam Chair, the time that it took was really to obtain the facts and...
What were the facts? You go to the Twitter account, you see Mr. Marouf on the Twitter account, what he said. You see that they had 2 conferences in Halifax and in Vancouver, I believe, and Mr. Marouf was a speaker at both of these conferences. I found that in 2 seconds going to the Google search. What was the delay? What was the issue? It seems the facts are obvious.
Madam Chair, I understand, and as I say, I agree that it took longer than it needed to, and I think we would, again, if it were to happen again, although we do not want to be in this situation again, and we have taken steps to ensure that we are not in this situation again, but should we be in this situation again, yes, the minister can terminate immediately, but we also have a much
But at what date did you provide advice from the department to the minister's office suggesting that you thought the contract should be suspended or terminated?
I would need to get back to you with the precise
Okay,
date.
if you could get back to the precise date, that would be great. And finally, would you be able to please produce the letter of termination, all the letters between the department and CMAQ suspending and terminating the contract?
If I am able to, they may be protected.
They should not be privileged because they are letters to a third party. I would appreciate you producing them if possible. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Vous êtes en sourdine, Madame la Présidente. On vous entend pas.
You're on mute, Madam Chair. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. No wonder Anthony didn't hear me when I said that his time was up. Sorry. We'll now go to the Bloc Québécois for 6 minutes. Martin Champeau. Martin, 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will continue along the same line of thinking. Whose responsibility was it? Who needed to sound the alarm or make the recommendation to act immediately at the Department of Heritage? Ms. Canna.
Merci pour la...
Thank you for the question.
Accountability for this is very important, and ultimately it was the responsibility of myself and Charles, and so we did ultimately take steps.
Ultimately, mais à partir du moment où on...
I don't want to continue hammering this home, but understanding the process, it's difficult to see why it took so much time when the facts seem so obvious for everyone. You had the tweets in front of you and these comments that were absolutely unacceptable. They were anti-Francophone, anti-Semitic, extremely hateful. Who was supposed to take the decision? Who did not take the responsibility seriously? I want to know why it took so long. No one here around the table, Ms. Canna, would have waited a single minute to tell Mr. Marouf that it was finished. Why did it take so much time?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question.
I do understand the concerns, and I agree with you that we could have moved more quickly. I think in similar circumstances again, if we had to be in this situation again, we would move more quickly. We wanted to make sure we had it right. We reviewed the contract.
Madame Canna, je ne sais pas ce que c'est.
Ms. Canna, you wanted to make sure you were doing things right, but I don't know what other argument it could have possibly taken above and beyond the tangible, concrete evidence that you already had. But I understand that we won't we might not hear more about this, but you said there were 2 rounds of assessment when the program was implemented. Can you remind the committee how many submissions were made for that program in total? 1,100. And of the 1,100 applications, how many did receive funding?
85, Madam Chair.
OK. Qu'est-ce que c'était les critères?
Okay. And what were the criteria that made it such that CMAQ was not taken on after the first round? Do you remember?
Madam Chair, I was not part of that initial review, but my understanding is that there was nothing wrong with the project proposal. It was merely that there were, as you said, 1,100 applications and only 85 could be accepted. So there was nothing deficient, but it was just, it wasn't at the top.
Il restait de l'argent, donc.
And there was funding left over at the end, I'm understanding. So how does the verification of applicants work? Are a few applicants chosen at random, or does each file of an applicant go through a rigorous review? Is it systematically all applicants? Yes? Okay.
Madam Chair, each application is reviewed.
OK. En septembre 2022, le 12 septembre,
On September 12, 2022, in the National Post, the minister said that there was a deficiency in the system and that many measures would be put in place for this never to happen again. An assessment training for all agents working in the program, ensuring that each application for funding was reviewed before the funding was approved, for a training including awareness training on anti-Semitism and anti-racism, among others. And candidates must make sure that they respect anti-harassment rules, etc. Don't you think that these are measures that all should have been in place before?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. There are very well established procedures that were in place prior to looking at the financials, looking at the organization. Was it a first-time organization? A risk-based comprehensive review is taken of the applications. What this case has brought to light is while the contract itself was cancelled under the previous system, we wanted to make it much clearer, explicit, that individuals who espouse hate, racism, or discrimination will not be eligible for funding. And these additional requirements were brought in, and training, because it was new. So there was previously training done for program advisors, but this new training that was done specifically on the new criteria that we were piloting, as well as additional training on anti-racism and anti-Semitism.
Diriez-vous, Madame Cana, que...
Ms. Canna, would you say?
You have about 10 seconds left.
Bon, je vais en rester là pour l'instant.
Okay, well, I'll stay there for the moment. Thank you.
For the NDP, for 6 minutes, Peter Julian. Peter, 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks to our witnesses for being here. And this is obviously a concern to all members of the committee and to the Canadian public. I think writ large, we've seen more and more instances of anti-Semitic hate and all other forms of toxic hate. A year ago, on Parliament Hill, a Nazi flag, which is a despicable symbol of genocidal violence, was waved during the so-called Freedom Convoy. This is something that we all have to be concerned about, the Canadians. The rise in anti-Semitism, the rise in hate. I've introduced the Private Members Bill C-229 to ban those symbols of hate, like the Nazi flag, that represents nothing more than genocidal violence and hate. that led to the Holocaust. So the concerns, I think, are very, very legitimate. And the fact that this anti-Semitism was funded by the federal government, funded by the taxpayers, I find unbelievable. I want to understand that there are changes that have been made to ensure this never happens again. And I listened very carefully to your testimony. Thank you, Madame Cana. That there is a new procedures that have been put into place. There is, I think you referred to it as a deeper assessment that actually includes individuals as well as organizations. Would you suggest that all of those procedures are now in place? Because it was unclear to me whether the department was still considering that or whether the department had put in place concrete measures.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. The attestation and the program eligibility requirements that have been strengthened, those are now in place. All of the active files that were in the system when this was discovered, subsequent to Minister Hussen asking for a pause and a comprehensive review, all of those agreements have been re-reviewed by program advisors using this new criteria where we've gone back and looked at the application to ensure that we are doing the deeper enhanced online searches. So that has been done. It has been done with a view to testing the system, piloting it, and better understanding what needs to be added to it. So the objective is to ensure that we will be reviewing in this manner, but we will be assessing, including audit, our internal audit will be looking at this just to make sure that we can have the best possible advice and evaluation of the process that we have undertaken.
You made reference to a training process, training material. Mr. Housefather has asked that we get copies of that material, and I echo his call. Does the training process and training material, does it include a definition of anti-Semitism?
Yes, Madam Chair, the training that was done on October 27th was done by UNESCO with the Special Envoy for Holocaust Remembrance and Combating Anti-Semitism, and the definition of anti-Semitism that was used is the definition by the International Holocaust Remembrance Association, which is the same definition which is adopted as part of Canada's anti-racism strategy.
I know the organization. I don't question their work at all. They do terrific work. The definition itself, as I'm sure you're aware, has been controversial because less clear. Are you familiar with or incorporated in the training materials is there reference to the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism, which as a definition says very clearly anti-Semitism is discrimination, prejudice, hostility, or violence against Jews as Jews or Jewish institutions as Jewish. Is that incorporated into the material that is provided for training?
Madam Chair, I'm going to turn to my colleague. Okay, I am aware that the definition that was used is the IHRA definition for anti-Semitism. I am not sure about the Jerusalem Declaration.
Did you need to confirm that, or?
Yeah, just to add, I'm not aware of it being part of that training. We'd have to go back and verify.
Okay. The concerns have been raised. I think the minister received correspondence in this regard as well. One of the concerns that was raised is by Kenneth Stern, who wrote in The Guardian, as the American Jewish Committee's anti-Semitism expert. I was the lead drafter of what was then called the Working Definition of Anti-Semitism. He suggests that there are concerns with that definition because it is less clear, one of the concerns that has been raised is that white supremacists, the most vicious anti-Semites of all, and I reference the flying of the Nazi flag, can find loopholes through that definition that are not available for them to use through the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism. Are you aware of those concerns that have been raised?
Madam Chair, I am not aware of those concerns that have been raised. We developed, working with UNESCO and the special envoy for the training that was done, but I am not sure if it contains the references that you are referring to.
Madam Chair, if you'd like me to continue, I will continue with pleasure.
No. Sorry, I keep muting myself, and then I forget that I'm muted. I'm sorry, your time is up, Peter. And we're going to go into the second round now. That round is a 5-minute round, and I begin with a Conservative member for 5 minutes. I don't know who that's going to be.
MP Lantzman.
Yes, Ms. Lantzman.
Thanks, Mrs. Chair. I'm just going to start. I sitting here, and I think Canadians watching this are still unsure as to why it took so long. You said on August 19th, the contract was suspended. Is there a difference between cancel it, terminated, and suspended in the view of the department? Just a yes or no.
Chair.
Why wasn't it canceled and terminated? And in that case, when was it canceled and terminated?
Madam Chair, it was so it was suspended on August the 19th, and it was terminated on September 23rd, and the reason for that is pursuant to the agreement that was in place at the time. 30 days notice had to be provided to the applicant, and in this case, that was when the 30 days were up.
Wow. So a long list of clearly anti-Semitic, anti-French, anti-Black tweets, and you'd still respect the 30 days. I find that shocking. So there's now a new date that we know, September 23rd, August 19th, it was suspended. It should have been terminated, and I think Canadians at home would agree. How many people work in the social media, or how many people work in communications at the Department of Heritage?
Madam Chair, well, I don't know the exact number, but
just approximate.
Maybe around 100.
100. How many people do you think monitor social media? And I assume all of those 100 people have access to a basic search engine like Google.
Madam Chair, it is. We do have a team that monitors social media. There are 24 accounts that the department has, 10,000 tags of the department every month, but there is monitoring that is done of the department's social media.
So, to your knowledge, Laith Marouf never came up in any media scan from the department before you heard about this, maybe in the mainstream media or from that call from the Chief of Staff.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
So in a press release in April of 2022, you have Laith Marouf's name, and you have the minister's name, and you have 2 quotes. Who approved those quotes?
The department looked at the quotes and ultimately recommended that they be approved by the minister.
So now the department is putting out communication with Laith Marouf's name in it, with the minister's name in it, presumably together, patting each other on the back for $133,000 of over $600,000 that the government of Canada has given to this frankly anti-Semite, and nobody in the department, in a team of 100 people, has ever come across a single tweet, to which there's a long list, if you want to see it, of his tweets, of his vile tweets. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, well. Today, the Globe and Mail says that Laith Marouf at one point was barred from entering Canada, and he was interviewed by CSIS, and this happened in 2009. Is there any interdepartmental communication about anybody who applies? And presumably, Mr. Marouf's name was on the application when he applied for CMAQ funding. Is there any conversation between the Ministry of Heritage and anybody else in government about the people who apply for taxpayer dollars in the Government of Canada? Yes or no?
Not that I am aware of. There has been interdepartmental discussion around processes and ensuring that we are all learning from one another in terms of best practices. But in terms of reviewing individual applications between departments, no, I don't.
Will there
believe
be
so.
anything in a vetting process in the future included in everything that the department is trying to do to right this very, very, very wrong thing that had happened?
Madam Chair, the review process that we have put into place since this unfortunate situation came up is what we have been focused on up to now. The Privacy Act would be an issue that we would need to be very mindful of in looking at additional sharing of information between departments. But we
Thank you, Ms. Landsman. I think your time is now up. And I'm going to go to the Liberals for 5 minutes, please. Mr. Housefather.
Thank you
5
very
minutes, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to start off by going through the list of things that I would like to see you deliver to this committee. They've been mentioned by me or my colleagues, or I'm going to add them. I want to see the new training that the department received. I want to see the new diligence procedures. And if you had a copy of the former diligence procedures, I'd like to see the former diligence procedures. I would like to see the contract with CMAQ, the actual contract. I would like to see the new template agreement that has replaced the old document that CMAQ had. I would like to see the new attestation. I would like to see the suspension letter to CMAQ, the termination letter to CMAQ, and any other correspondence between the department and CMAQ. Can you provide that, please? Thank you very much. I'm tempted to ask for internal emails, but I will not do that. So I want to come back to another issue, which is just something that's really gnawing at me, which is the termination notice. In Ms. Landsman's last round of question, the suspension was August the 19th, the termination was September the 23rd. And presumably this means that the lawyer who looked at this file, or the department, whoever made the decision, determined that the contract could not be terminated for cause effective immediately. Was there no clause in that agreement? I've never seen one in my life, and I've been a lawyer for well over 20 years. I have never seen a contract that did not allow immediate termination for cause for egregious things like this. Did that contract not have any provision that allowed termination for cause immediately?
Madam Chair, I don't believe that it did. I believe that we needed to, in that case, ensure that their 30 days notice was respected.
But was there any provision in the contract, whether or not for this issue, they said that it required 30 days, was there any issue? Let's say he had killed somebody. Was there any issue that you could terminate it immediately?
So, Madam Chair, when the contract was suspended, there was no further, it froze the situation. There was no further activity that could happen. They wouldn't be able to do anything more on the project. But this notice period was meant to give them, anybody, the reason for the notice period is meant to give anybody the opportunity to.
I understand, but notices, so let me just, again, I'm going to give you some, notices relate to an opportunity to cure. When you have given notice period, it's because you believe the defaulting party can cure the ill in the agreement. You didn't deliver me the goods on this date. I'm giving you this number of days to deliver it. But you always have in contracts cure periods related to defaults that can be cured and terminations immediately when the default cannot be cured. For example, the company goes bankrupt. And I'm shocked to hear that the department's standard contract didn't have that. That's why I want to see the contracts. So let me go to another question. Did any employee within the Canadian Heritage Department have any sanction or any discipline related to the delays?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. We have learned from this experience. We have taken.
So the answer is no.
No.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
correct.
So let me just now come to another issue, which I have to get into because it's important. Does the new contract incorporate the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, either the attestation or the new contract, require applicants to subscribe to the government's anti-racism strategy, which incorporates by definition the IHRA definition?
Madam Chair, the attestation and the requirements require that the individuals not undermine Canada's anti-racism strategy.
Which incorporates by reference the IHRA definition. And let me just mention, because it was important, my friend Mr. Julian brought it up, the Jerusalem Declaration is a competing definition of the IHRA definition. The IHRA definition was developed, including by Canada, by many countries over 10 years to come to a consensus definition of anti-Semitism. The Jerusalem Declaration was developed by 8 people. And it was a response to IHRA, but the internationally accepted definition that all Jewish organizations, all mainstream Jewish organizations in Canada subscribe to is IHRA, which is why the government adopted that. So I wouldn't want to see a competing definition come into this. So do I have any time left? I only have half a minute.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. So just to finish off, in terms of the new agreement, parce que je crois que c'est important pour les Québécois.
Because I think it's important for Quebecers to incorporate a clause that indicates that people cannot discriminate based on language, because language was not included prior. So now, can language be included as a basis of discrimination?
For the question, and yes, discrimination on the basis of language is also one of the criteria that would make an applicant ineligible for government funding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. And now I go to Mr. Champoux for 2.5 minutes, please, Martin.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Kenna, does it seem to you that the lesson that you had to take away from this experience is well understood and well implemented across the government, across departments?
Madam Chair, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question.
All departments that have grants and contributions have been very attentive and interested in the work that we have done and the learning that we have done over the last few months. Mm-hmm. We have had at least 2 meetings with other departments to share the work that we have done.
Est-ce que vous avez été consulté quand t'es venu?
Were you consulted when it was time to appoint Mr. Al-Gawabi in the fight against Islamophobia?
Est-ce que vous avez conseillé, par exemple?
And did you give advice to those who had to assess people for that post? Perhaps we should look at their social media, that sort of thing, because it seems that there's a pattern that is repeated across departments, and I am concerned to see that such a serious matter, such as the CMAQ matter, was not more obvious. So I don't have very much time, Ms. Kenna, but just a few minutes ago, we received emails through our committee clerk, and it contained the old and new versions of the application form and the agreements, and of course, we're here with you now, so we don't have time to go through them immediately. But you were on the front lines of this file, so can you tell us what is contained in the new application that corrects the concerns that you've heard in this meeting today?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question.
Madam Chair, je vais tourner.
Ms. Chair, I will turn to my colleague, Charles, to answer this question.
Madame la Présidente, je pense que
Madam Chair, first of all, I don't have much time, so I would like to ask you to indulge me. Our question did not hear the question, so I will repeat the question to him with your permission and with the committee's generosity. I think everyone is interested in hearing this. So, Mr. Slowey, here's what I want to know. Today, just a few minutes ago, we heard emails with the new and old versions of the application forms for the programs, and also the new version of the contract. What I want to know is, in this new version, is there a correction, the answer to our concerns that we have been expressing to you today?
Mr. Slowey?
Thank you for the question. Yes, so in the materials that you've received both the previous contribution agreement and application and the new contribution agreement and application. where we've strengthened, particularly in the contribution agreement under Annex C, which is the general terms and conditions. Number 2 is the obligations, which we clearly lay out new expectations and obligations for all applicants. It strengthens the points that we've made around clarifying up front the expectations for certain behaviors, and then the repercussions within Section D for what we can do in terms of acting quickly to end the contract.
Thank you, Martin. I think that your time is now up. And I'll go for the NDP, Mr. Julian Peter, for 2.5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're going to have to, of course, go through all of the old applications, new applications, the old contribution agreement, the new contribution agreement. I am, as I think we all are around this table, concerned about the length of time that this took. Really, essentially from point of first clearly identifying the hateful anti-Semitism that was being funded by the federal government to actually ending the contract took over 2 months. And with the rise of white supremacy, the rise in hate, we can't have a federal government that takes that long to respond to egregious cases of hate being disseminated, whether that's online or in any other venue. So when you talk about the measures that have been put into place, what are the measures that would mean that if something comes to light, if something is identified with the department or in the ongoing vetting that is taking place within the department, there can be a rapid end to that contract. The reality is it undermines confidence in our federal government when we have federal government funds going to a person or an organization that is propagating vicious anti-Semitic comments and hateful messages.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. I think it's a very important question that you're raising, sir. The contract was suspended on August the 19th. The new changes that we have brought into force would allow for the minister, depending on the severity of the situation, so in a situation such as this, the minister would be able to terminate the agreement immediately.
So in the case where it is identified on July 18th, it becomes something that the minister is aware of on July 26th, August 2nd, the first steps are taken. What do you think the timeline would be now in the new framework? How long would that take? If we're taking July 18th
Thank you, Madam
as
Chair.
the starting point, how long would it be before that contract would be ended?
I understand the question. I think it will always depend on the facts, the complexity of the facts. I will say that we could have moved faster on this case. It was clear, and we could have moved faster. I wish we had moved faster. I think in a situation such as this one, and again, I hope very much that the measures that we've put in place, I'm confident that the measures that we've put in place will make a difference. But if we were in such a situation again, I believe that we would be able to move more quickly in a matter of days.
Thank you, Ms. Kanna. Peter, your time is up. And I want to thank the two witnesses, Ms. Kanna and Mr. Slowey.
Sorry, point of order,
today.
Chair.
Yes, Mrs. Thomas.
Thank you. Sorry, we are close to the end of a round here, and we still do have a bit of time. And I'm wondering, especially given that the original motion actually said that an entire committee meeting would be dedicated to this, and then at the last minute that was changed, unbeknownst to this committee, aside from a notice that was sent to us only a couple of days ago. So I guess, number one, I'm curious as to why that change was made by you unilaterally as the clerk or as the chair. And secondly, I'm wondering if you would then allow for this round to be completed.
I think the round is completed, Mrs. Thomas.
If you wouldn't mind just checking with the clerk on that, that would be great.
I can tell you, because I keep a time on a stopwatch here, the round comprises 4 political parties, and I think the Conservatives, the Liberals, the Bloc Québécois, and the NDP have just completed the second round, and we were going to do those 2 rounds. Thank you very much.
Point of order.
I'd like to know who is raising the point of order.
It's Marilyn
Point of order.
Gladue. It's Marilyn Gladue, Chair.
Point of order.
Actually, the round is not finished. There is a Conservative and then a Liberal to go. And I would just ask, I think it's the will of the committee that at least we'd have the one Conservative question and perhaps one Liberal question with the limited time that we
I'm
have.
sorry, Marilyn, you are absolutely right, and I did not factor that in. So I apologize to the committee, and I'm going to start again with the Conservatives. I don't know who's going to do the question.
It will be me.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
It's Mr. Yes, thank you. I would share the concern that we actually need to take more time. I have more questions for our witnesses. I don't understand why the agenda was changed, but I do agree that we should allow more time. I would suggest not only completing this round, but also doing one further round if other members are in agreement. There are lots of questions that we still have to ask.
I will ask for unanimous consent on this, but I do think it also depends on whether the witnesses are able to stay for that extra time.
Yes, Chair. I'm seeing indications that the witnesses are able to stay, and so I would. I think there is unanimous consent for that.
All right. Is there unanimous consent? Is there anyone who objects to this? No, so that means there is unanimous consent. So what we will do is finish this round with Marilyn, and then obviously Mr. Housefather will do the second 5 minutes for the Liberals, and we could then go into a third round. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Présidente,
Oh.
J'aime beaucoup mes amis.
Madam Chair, I really like my Liberal friends, but it seems they're a pretty numerous bunch around the table today. Is this everyone? There usually aren't this many. Okay, thank you.
I think we are allowed, as you know, Martin, you're allowed to have other MPs attend. And I think we have a few MPs who are interested just being there to listen.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so begin again, Marilyn, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
Wait, whoa. Before you begin, Marilyn, I just want to get back my stopwatch. I got out of there for a while. Okay, here we go. Begin, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the witnesses for staying. We've had a lot of discussion about the incident that happened in last summer and the contract, but I'm more concerned even more broadly. Were you aware that Latham Marouf's company, CMAC, has been awarded multiple contracts since 2015, more than $500,000 worth?
Madam Chair, for the question. I wonder if the member is referring to CRTC cost awards. Is that?
He received the Broadcast Participation Fund. He received money as well from Minister Miller, even though he had made vile comments about Indigenous people. And so it appears to me that across all departments, whatever we were doing certainly was not preventing the behaviors, because it's not like Mr. Marouf woke up last summer and began tweeting violent and offensive things. This is a pattern of behavior that, we can see. He was barred from re-entering Canada in 2009. It's a long history. But the fact that he's been awarded all these contracts since 2015 really surprises me. What instructions are the communications department given when they go to look into who's applying for the grants?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. The analysis of the applications is done by program advisors who work for the Anti-Racism Action Program. So I'm talking about the contract that was awarded to Mr. Marouf. In the previous process that we had, we did a risk-based assessment that looked at financials, that looked at the whether the applicant was a first-time applicant. There's a series of questions and points of inquiry that are made. That has been improved upon as a result.
That's fine. And is there a review done after the project is complete to assess whether or not the money was well spent, for example, or whether there were any issues such as these?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, there are midterm requirements for midterm reports before additional funds are awarded. That's a very common feature in contribution agreements.
And so there was some discussion, I think, about definitions to use. My understanding is IRA definition is not controversial. Is that your assessment as well?
Madam Chair, the definition for anti-Semitism that is part of Canada's anti-racism strategy is the one that has been given by the International Holocaust Remembrance Association.
And in terms of other departments that have awarded money to CMAQ, are you aware of what their practices are? Like, is it a standard set of selection criteria that all departments use, or does each one have their own?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Broadly speaking, there is, I think, similarity in terms of the kinds of questions and the kinds of analysis that are done when and there is information sharing that is done between departments in terms of best practices. When this case came to light, we did share the work that we were doing with other departments and actually borrowed some of the best practices that we had learned as well to add to the attestation that we now have. So there is a forum for sharing information in order to determine best practices for awarding of grants and contributions.
And you said that there was a look back at all the contracts that had been awarded. Has that been completed?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. There has been a review completed over the last few months of all active agreements that are under the Anti-Racism Action Program and the Multiculturalism Program that we have. That review has been completed by officials. We are the money is now moving to community groups in batches. We are moving that through as quickly as we can, and we are in discussions now to just get the final review completed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gladue. And then I go to, for the Liberals, Anthony Housefather for 5 minutes, please, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to both of you for being willing to stay another round. It's appreciated. I just have a couple questions to tidy up some stuff that's happened before. So a number of references have come up to the minister, and Minister Rodriguez's name was mentioned previously in one round of questioning by Ms. Thomas. You have been referring to Minister Hussen in all of your references to the minister, right?
Madam Chair, the minister responsible for these two programs that I'm referring to is Minister Hussen.
So, right, when you were saying that, you know, there was an agreement with the minister to suspend the agreement on the 19th of August, that minister was Minister Hussen, not Minister Rodriguez.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
And in these type of situations, the department acts as a silo in the sense that you're reporting to Minister Rodriguez, Minister Hussen, so you're not alerting Minister Rodriguez or involving Minister Rodriguez in any of the discussions or decisions related to this contract, correct?
Madam Chair, we work as a department, but in this case, we were working with Minister Hussen.
Thank you. So let me come to another question. When you talked about the training, you mentioned that UNESCO had done the training. I find that hard to believe. Are you sure you didn't mean the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal or a Canadian group?
Madam Chair, we worked with the Special Envoy for Holocaust Remembrance.
Yeah, Erwin Kohler, yeah.
Professor Kotler, but we had been working with UNESCO. They had training that they had been developing, and this was an opportunity to be able to try that training. They had. We had lots of discussions with them. We have since had conversations with Friends of Simon Wiesenthal, with other groups. And
The Jewish Public Servants Alliance, as I understand it?
That's correct. And with the Canada School of Public Servants and Canada School of Public Service, pardon me. And we are working to develop other training on anti-Semitism because anti-Semitism, combating anti-Semitism is an integral part of Canada's anti-racism strategy. We know that we need to ensure that there is a continuing awareness and understanding of the way that anti-Semitism is experienced.
I understand. I agree. But so what I'm basically though understanding is that because of this incident, we're trying to figure out all the you make lemonade out of lemons. You now have a situation where the Jewish Public Servants Network and Simon Wiesenthal and the Public Service Alliance and Professor Kotler are working with the department to create anti-Semitism training that could be rolled out across government, across the departments, correct?
That is correct.
And that is a good thing. The other thing I wanted to see if it's okay to come back to, who was the attorney that was working with the department on providing you advice related to the contract? Is that person in Canadian Heritage or is it an attorney in Justice?
Madam Chair, the way that they are Department of Justice Counsel, but they work through Canadian Heritage.
And did you have trouble accessing that counsel? Is that why there was such a long time in terms of providing, or was that not the part of the delay? Was it not the legal advice that caused the delay?
Madam Chair, I would say that the time that it took was not isolated to legal advice. It was the length of time it took the system to kick in, and I acknowledge that it took too long.
Okay, so let's look at the new attestation and new agreement. How long did it take from the time that Minister Hussen was here at committee till that agreement and attestation were completed? When did the department approve the new attestation and agreement?
Madam Chair, the new attestation was posted online on December 14th. I would have to get back to you on when it was approved, but when it was posted online was December 14th.
And as basically you said, that new agreement basically allows now termination immediately for cause, and there will never have to be a delay anymore if a person is found to have been violating either the Charter of Rights or the anti-racism strategy. Correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. There is now the option for the minister to be able to terminate the agreement immediately.
Thank you so much. My 5 minutes are done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, we don't hear you.
Sorry. You had 30 seconds left, but that's okay. I'm going to move now to the third round that was requested unanimously by the committee. And so I begin.
The sound quality coming from the current speaker is not sufficient for interpretation to be provided. Interpretation will resume as soon as the sound quality allows it.
We will suspend until that happens.
Yeah, I think the translation maybe had some issues with you, Madam Chair. At least I've heard in my earpiece that they were talking about that, but if we're fair to go, I'm fair to start here.
Clerk, are they ready to go?
Are they good? Okay, thanks, Clerk.
Good. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Begin, Kevin.
Thank you, Madam
minutes.
Chair. Thank you, guests, for being here, and thank you for staying a little longer here. Was the full amount demanded to be repaid? We've talked about the $133,000 that we now know has not been repaid. You've gone to a third party to collect it. So my first question was the full amount demanded to repaid? And if so, could we get the letter that the department sent to recover this money?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think that was requested, Mr. Waugh, by Mr. Housefather.
Okay.
We will get that for you. The amount that was requested was $122,661. There had been a holdback of $11,000 that remained, which was not. It was not paid out. So what we requested back was $122,661.
Is there any failure to, is there any penalty for failure to repay the $122,000? I mean, this has gone on month after month here. And I know, what actions then can the department or government take? You're paying a third party, kind of a tax collector now. And there is obviously commissions involved in that too. So is there a date to get all this money back into the government coffers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is a very much an interest, a strong interest to get that money back. The first attempt has been to demand the money back, then to, when that didn't produce, then to seek a third party who has been attempting to get the money from the organization since December. There have been 5 attempts that have been made. We are wanting to ensure that we allow that process to unfold, but the minister is also looking at other options, including legal options.
What would other options be?
It would be possible for the minister to take legal action.
Yeah, I'm concerned. I mean, not only, well, you admitted there was 1,100 applications, and at first CMAQ did not qualify. You stated that. They did not make the grade on the, yeah, go ahead.
But just thank you. As
Yeah.
a point of clarification, it wasn't that they were not eligible. It was that there were a number of other projects that were deemed to be, the cream of the crop, because it was 1,100 projects.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it was ineligible and then found to be eligible. It was just not chosen.
I'm really concerned that you've attempted 5 times since December, 2 or 3 months now. You've not had any correspondence, I believe, from CMAQ on recovering the $122,000.
Madam Chair, we have had some correspondence from CMAQ. They have not yet paid the money back yet, though.
Is that a concern, don't you think?
Yes.
You gave them the money originally, the $133,000. So now we understand 11,000 of that was used. But the taxpayers of this country are on the hook for $122,000, which was granted in 2022. And there doesn't seem to be any rush by CMAQ to stroke the government and the department, the $122,000. Could we suspend from CMAQ ever applying again? I mean, this is a huge red flag, taking the money, and so far, as we know, no intention at all of paying any of it back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The government very much seeking that money back and attempting through a third party for now, but also very much wanting to keep the option open to pursue.
So who's responsible in the department for getting the money back? So when will we know the $122,000 of this grant has been repaid, or if it ever does get paid?
So the Department of Canadian Heritage is communicating with the third party to get updates as to their efforts, and so on the basis of what looks like the results of that, we'll have to decide what other actions the minister would like to take.
Is there any end date?
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, your time is up. And now I'm going to go to Mr. Housefather for 5 minutes for the Liberals, please.
Thanks so much. Mr. Lewis is going to do this round.
All right, Mr. Lewis, please begin.
Thank you, Madam
For
Chair.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the witnesses, especially for this extra time that you've been here. It's very appreciated. I thought I'd kind of bring things back to a more broad topics and ask you a bit more about the funding itself, about the lessons learned, and about next steps, just in a broad thing, and give you a chance to sort of sum things up in the last round we have here. We're talking about community support, multiculturalism, and anti-racism initiative programs, CSMARI, and the Anti-Racism Action Program. What kind of programs are usually approved for those type of programs? Can you give an example of programs that usually get approved?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe for your first question, lessons learned. I think because there have been very important lessons that we have learned through this terrible situation. I think making very explicit that racism, hate, and discrimination would make you ab initio ineligible for government funding, and requiring applicants to attest upfront themselves that they or anyone that is associated with the project will not engage in hate. I think those are important lessons that we've learned. We also recognize that on a more systematic basis, the individuals, not just the organization, but the individuals that are associated with the organization need to be searched. And then, as has been discussed, the ability to immediately terminate an agreement. So all of that has been learning that we are applying. In terms of the kinds of projects that are typically funded under both the Anti-Racism Action Program and the Multiculturalism Program, $100 million has been committed under Canada's anti-racism strategy, $70 million to community groups. There is a tremendous amount of work that small community groups across the country are engaged in. Canada's anti-racism strategy works to dismantle systemic barriers around employment, justice, and social participation. So the projects are really aimed at that. There we have a number of projects that are dealing. Member Mr. Julian referred to the increasing hate since COVID, and we have a number of projects that deal with hate. And so I do want to say that in spite of this terrible situation, there are a number of very good programs and community groups that are working hard on the ground to ensure that we have the most inclusive Canada that we all want to see. The other thing I will like to say is the program advisors that we have at the Department of Justice, who work very hard to implement these programs every single day, delivering the mandate, and working particularly during COVID to ensure that the money is going to community groups that are doing the work that we want to do.
And yes, it is important. The work, the anti-racism work that we're doing is absolutely important, and we're just seeing that Canadians just want to make sure that that vetting process is strengthened, the ability to terminate contracts, all of the things we mentioned today. It seems like we're all on the same page, and we're just kind of expecting that to move forward at a faster pace. But thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Yep, I have 1 minute left. I'm going to cede to Mr. Housefather.
So thank you.
Anthony, for 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. So since the new guidelines have been in place, have any groups been denied funding? Has any big groups been flagged as a result of the new guidelines?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the review that we've done, there were a handful of organizations where there were questions that were raised as a result of the additional screening. But ultimately, we had a closer review, and ultimately there was a recommendation that the funding not be removed, or that no further actions be taken.
30 seconds.
Can I just ask, what were those flags? Were there any defamatory, racist, anti-Semitic, Francophobic tweets in amongst them?
Madam Chair, the concerns were that they weren't, the individual comments that an individual may have made they're no longer associated to the project, so it was deemed to not be in scope. If it had been of the nature of commentary that you're describing, I can assure you we would have taken steps.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the time is up, and I will go to the Bloc Québécois, Martin Champeau, for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question similar to Anthony's. In the list of criteria to monitor, anti-Francophone comments are taken into account, and these are increasing on social media. So are those a part of the criteria? Yes or no? Okay, thank you. I'd like to come back to our earlier conversation between Mr. Waugh and yourself about Mr. Marouf's and CMAC's contract and the government procedure. Here's my question. To your knowledge, did Mr. Marouf start using the funds that had been granted under the program?
Alors, est-ce qu'on lui demande de...
And so is he being asked to return the total sum of the money granted? Do you think that there will be a legal dispute? Do you think that this will be a prolonged process? And what are the steps that the department is willing to take in order to recover those funds?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The money was demanded to be returned, all of the money that had been provided to CMAC. We have used a third-party collection agency who has is attempting to recover the funds. There is a process through the Canada Revenue Agency where if there are any refunds owing, those can be recouped. We have also engaged on that level. And our interest was seeing if those methods would work. We would like those methods to try to be able to be enforced, and if they are not, then we will have to look at other options.
Monsieur Marouf a probablement déjà dépensé.
Mr. Marouf has probably already spent a part of that money. Are you aware how much money was awarded to him through the program? Of that money, how much he has already spent? Do you have any information on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
30 seconds.
I don't have more precise amounts than the money that was given to CMAC for the work done on $122,661.
À votre connaissance, est-ce que...
To your knowledge, did the CRTC undertake the same measures to recoup the money awarded by their organization?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The cost awards, I believe you're referring to as a means of being reimbursed for participating in CRTC hearings. The Canadian Department of Canadian Heritage has no role in that process, so I am not at liberty to say.
Thank you very much. The time is up.
Thank you.
I'm going to go for the NDP for Mr. Julian. Peter, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned earlier, Madam Kana, that there has been a review undertaken, I'm assuming, on the thousands of contracts that are accorded to Canadian Heritage.
Rappel au règlement.
A point of order. Sorry, Mr. Julian, there is no French interpretation, Madam Chair.
I will suspend until we get that then. Thank you. I have no idea what's going on. You, Peter.
Merci, Mr. Champoux.
Thank you, Mr. Champoux, and thank you, Madam Chair.
The review that was of existing contracts, that included social media vetting? Did that include all of the measures that obviously come to mind in this circumstance that need to be done. So can you assure us that there are no further expressions of hate out there for any of the recipients or their employees of these contracts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the review that was done was of the two programs that Minister Hussen is responsible for, the Anti-Racism Action Program and the Multiculturalism Program. We reviewed all of the active recipients, the agreements that were already in place. Because the minister paused all of both of those programs, so we took the time during that pause to review all of the active agreements. There were about 350 active agreements. There were also, because there's a continuous intake, there were also additional applications that were made for funds. Those applications, there were about 200 of them, those were also reviewed. And the review that was done was what I was describing before, which is not just an internet search done of the organization, but of the board of directors, the executive director, and consultants or others who are associated to the project and that are in the project listed in the application. And so those individuals, there was a Google search done, and any results that came up that were of concern would be flagged to a manager and then looked at more closely by legal, our Center of Expertise, comms, for assessment.
Okay. Thank you. Now, one of the concerns that have come up is the lack of communication within the department between Minister Hussen and Mr. Rodriguez. I was stunned to learn that Minister Rodriguez testified he didn't learn about all of this until August 22nd. Have measures been taken internally so the Minister of Canadian Heritage is aware of problems happening in his ministry, even if they're administered by another minister?
I will allow, but time is up, but I will allow Ms. Connor to respond.
Thank you for the question. Within the department, we are, and I think this case has been a good example of an opportunity for us to reinforce the importance of, as a department, working to ensure that we are sharing pertinent information in as timely a way as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. I'm going to go to the Conservatives for 5 minutes, please. Martin Shields. Mr. Shield.
Thank you, Madam
5
Chair.
minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the witnesses. Challenged to answer some of the questions I understand. One of the things that this business and the people involved with this business have been involved for many years in getting government contracts, about 600,000. Businesses can easily change their names. How are you going to make sure that across the silos this is communicated so it doesn't pop up somewhere else?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are ensuring that within the Department of Canadian Heritage that we are.
I got the Department of Heritage, but he's applied for contracts, other things. How will this information be shared with other departments so they're aware of this?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. The communications that we have with other departments are really around processes. We do not have
So what you're talking about, the processes that you're now putting in place, that you've talked about, the many agencies you've talked to, the different things you're going to do with yours, are now being shared across the government spectrum where people apply for grants?
We are sharing the processes that we have put in place with other departments. Was that your question, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you share us with that communication that you've done on that particular aspect? Because that's critical.
I believe we can, yes.
Okay. Talking about communication, we also received a letter demanding whatever the committee does and says that it goes to the lawyers representing them. You mentioned that you've had communication with representatives of this company. Would you please share that documentation, that communication with us?
The correspondence between the organization, council, and the department?
Right, on the request for the money back.
We will I want to just make sure that there's no issue with sharing it, but if we're able to share it, I will be very pleased to
This
share
is not
it.
client confidentiality we're talking about here, because he's demanding that information, communication that we're doing, that's communication he's having with you. That's not client confidentiality. I think it's important we know what's happening with the request for money and what they're communicating to you.
I will make best efforts to get you the information you're seeking. I understand the reason why you would like it, and I will make best efforts to make sure that we can provide it to the committee.
One last time, you'd mentioned that there was no one released from their job because of this situation, but has there been disciplinary action for any staff over what happened here?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. This accountability is very important. I have spoken to the employees that were involved in this case. This was a situation where the process did not work to ensure that we were able to catch this. This was not a situation where an individual employee, there was no bad faith, and there was not a situation where processes were not followed. Processes were followed in this case.
Would you suggest then that the process you had was absolutely negligent in what was in place before then?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would not. I would say that this was an opportunity for us to learn and do better, and we have taken steps to do so. But the processes that were in place before are strong processes in terms of review process. This is what we have done now, strengthens it.
And that's why I'll be interested in communication with other departments in the process that you're suggesting. One other thing, following up with my colleague, when he asked about who was involved in providing you with the training and information, and you said you were going to be pursuing it with others, but you left out others. What do you mean by others that you're?
In terms of training,
Yeah.
So we have had conversations with Simon Wiesenthal Center.
You mentioned that one already.
We have had conversations with the Jewish Public Servants Network.
You mentioned that one.
And it may be that there are other community groups that we have outreach to. We do outreach with many. Those are the ones that I am aware of.
You made the statement, though, that you're going to pursue it with others. So when you say you're going to pursue it with others, I assumed you had others in mind.
I was referring to the work that my team is doing.
Okay.
And wanting to leave the option of them to consult with the relevant community partners.
I think that's important. So could you supply us with those information from who you have contacted to work with you and provide you that support as you've changed this process and training, and any others that you will be in contact with? I think that's important for us to understand what you're doing to remedy this situation. As you've said, it's a learning experience. We need to know and see what that has created and who you've talked to do it. You'll be able to provide us that?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll turn the time to my colleague, Gladue.
Very good. Quickly, I just want to make sure that CMAC is not receiving funding from any other departments or ministries when we see the scope
I'm
of
sorry,
what
the
they've gotten.
time is well overdue, Marilyn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, my love. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm going to go to the final round for the Liberals. Mr. Housefather for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully I won't take all 5 minutes. Just a couple of questions. First of all, just to clarify, my understanding is the only Department of Canadian Heritage contract that CMAC received was this one for $133,000 on the anti-racism strategy. There were no others from that department.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. And the CRTC, as you said, is an independent third-party organization, and costs awarded by the CRTC are independent of the department.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
It's good. Okay, so coming back to what Mr. Shields has mentioned, I think we all understand that the initial granting of the monies through a process that needed to be fixed, nobody is accountable or nobody is responsible for making a mistake because that was what the process was. I think the issue or the clarity that people want is why there was no accountability for the time frame between the time the minister was first alerted of this on July the 18th and the actual suspension on August the 19th. I think that's where people are confused, because that's not a process question. That's a question of whether things were taken seriously. And do you have any response to that?
Madam Chair, I understand the question, and what I can say is that anti-Semitism, there is no place for it. There was the time it took was really an effort to understand the situation, and yes, it took too long.
Je dois vous dire quelque chose parce que je crois que c'est.
I must tell you something because I think it's important. And yes, there might be a problem with this feeling, but because there were two groups that were the most vilified, Quebecois and Jews, there's a feeling among those groups that had a different group been vilified, action would have been taken faster. Can you assure me this is not the case?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I can assure you, and the work that the department has done, both to ensure that both official languages are respected and celebrated in the programming that we do, and to ensure that anti-Semitism is combated with the programming that we do, whether it's the summit that we had on anti-Semitism, roundtables. We need to continue our efforts. We need to be vigilant. We understand that hate is going up, and anti-Semitism is an integral part of Canada's anti-racism strategy, but we need to continue efforts to ensure that it is understood in terms of how it is manifest in society, but also within our institutions, and that is the work that we are engaged in.
Okay, I thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
On vous entend pas.
Madam Chair, could I have a point of order here, if you don't mind, just for a second? It's Kevin. It's Kevin.
Yes, Kevin.
I'm wondering if we could get any communication between the Department of Canadian Heritage to Maroof and CMAC and back, CMAC to the department from August the 2nd to today. So what we have here, Madam Chair, is you have one minister spending the money, and now the other minister, Rodriguez, trying to collect the money. And I'm just wondering if we could get any communication provided, emails, from the department to us.
I think Mr. Shields already asked for that in his presentation. I'm sorry. So I think what I wanted to say is that the clerk has duly noted all the documents requested by every single one of the committee members, and I think those should be sent as soon as possible by the department and will be distributed to everyone on the committee. I just needed to say that we must go.
Rappel au règlement, Madame la Présidente.
Point of order, Madam Chair. There is no interpretation in French for you.
I'm sorry. What is going on, please? Can we get moving on this?
Sorry,
Are the
Dr.
interpreters
Fry.
there?
There's an
Yes?
issue, I believe, with your headset, and interpretation is having difficulties interpreting for you. So that's where we're at.
I have the required headset to House Commons, so I.
Rappel au règlement,
Can
Madame
you
la
now
Présidente.
hear me?
Point of order, Madam Chair. The meeting has been interrupted, the interpretation, rather, has been interrupted multiple times because the quality of your virtual sound is inadequate for interpretation. The interpreters are not able to do their work.
The problem is that I am using the required headset by the House of Commons, so I want us to make sure that we do have interpretation now. Is there interpretation?
Non.
No?
No, there's a technical issue where the sound quality coming from your setup today is just not adequate for interpretation at the present time.
Can we work on
Point of
getting
order.
that done quickly? How long do we have before we end this meeting, clerk?
There's 15 minutes remaining in today's meeting. There was also a.
Do we have extra time? Yes.
we can have a little bit of extra time. I'm told. I can double check on that. Mr. Biddle
All
has
right.
a point of order.
Mr. Biddle, go ahead.
If Mr. Housefather was the last speaker, perhaps we can suspend, go into in camera, and sort out the technical issues while we're switching over.
I think we can do that. I'm clear that everyone will. Mr. Clerk obviously has a list of all the documents requested, and that they will be sent to you all. I also wanted to be very clear that this meeting did not have a timeline of 2 hours on it.
Encore, Madame la Présidente, un rappel.
Once again, point of order, Madam Chair. There is no interpretation into French. We need to suspend the meeting because there needs to be interpretation. We must suspend.
Suspend, yes.
Thank you.